Hi everyone, how are you? Happy week 3 of distance learning. We are just going to be focusing on one section this week. So you'll have one section and 2 assignments to go along with that section, and that will bring us to the end of the European Middle Ages. So to get started, I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can get through this last section. I'm going to minimize myself. And we can get started. So this is the 100 Years' War and the Plague. This is the 6th and final section of our unit on the European Middle Ages. Some of it will be quite relevant to things going on today. We are going to start by talking about the Bubonic Plague. During the 1300s, an epidemic struck parts of Asia, North Africa, and Europe. An epidemic, a word that you've probably been hearing a lot lately, just means a widespread occurrence of a disease. So this disease occurred in widespread areas throughout Asia, North Africa, and Europe. When this happened, approximately 1/3 of the European population was killed by the plague. And as such, the plague ripped society apart. One of the assignments that you are going to do over this week really focuses on the effects of the plague on society and how people reacted to it and the bad feelings that it tended to cause among different groups of people. The plague began in Asia. It traveled along trade routes. The fleas that were on the rats carried it around the world and infected much of the world as it did that, again, throughout parts of Asia, North Africa, and Europe, which at the time in the 1300s was where the largest part of the world, the largest part of the world's population lived. The plague is also known as the Black Death, which is another name that you may have heard it by. It got its name because it turned out purplish or black spots, kind of like a bruise, all along a person's skin. It took about 4 years, but within 4 years, it had reached almost every corner of Europe. So it really was far and widespread. After the first round of the plague, it came and it went. It did return again. However, it never returned as severely as that very first outbreak. It did affect every single area of life. Town population fell, trade declined, and the church suffered. The plague, was a devastating, absolutely life-altering, life-changing disease that fell upon society in the 1300s. Some of you may have heard me before we left school on March 13th compare the plague to the COVID-19 pandemic that we are seeing now. I really truly believe, and I think history is showing us this, that this is a modern plague. This is something that is it is already affecting every single area of our lives. We are seeing population decrease. We are seeing trade decline. We are seeing social institutions suffer. Your own different social interactions with people in your own the ways that you work with your family, with your friends, the way that you see other people, all of these things are changing. What we are living through now, by looking at it as a modern plague, I think that we can really see how it is going to change life. We have talked about different eras in history, and I talked about this with some of you last week on some of our Zoom calls, but different eras of history have occurred. We have entered a new era of history. We are going to look at things differently in the future. We are going to interact with people differently. Our country is going to interact with other countries differently. The world is going to change because of COVID-19, just like the world changed because of the plague in the 1300s. And finally, we are going to end our conversation about the European Middle Ages by talking about the 100 Years' War, the end event of the European Middle Ages. So the 100 Years' War did last for just over 100 years, and it was a grouping of battles between France and England. It was officially launched or started by England's King Edward III. He attempted to gain the French throne. As he did that, it began this very long war that was fought on and off from 1337 until 1453. Eventually, the French did win the war and pushed the English out of France. The 100 Years' War, there are many effects of it. One of them is that we see a change to the style of warfare. We see at this point in time the longbow prove to be very successful in battle and start to become a more integral part of warfare. Finally, the French and the British both experienced major changes because of the 100 Years' War. One, we see feelings of nationalism emerge. What is nationalism? It is support for or pride in one's own country. So people started to feel more strongly about their pride in their country. We also see the power and the prestige, the importance of the French monarch, the French king, the crown, start to increase. And as a result of the 100 Years' War, the English suffered a period of internal turmoil. They experienced a civil war known as the War of the Roses. The end of the war is considered to be the end of the European Middle Ages, and as such is also the end of our study, our unit on the European Middle Ages. So for homework this week, you are going to do two things. You'll have one assignment on the Black Death, and then you'll have another assignment on the 100 Years' War, looking at the causes and the effects of the 100 Years' War, filling out a chart based on that after you do a short reading. And then there are two different assignments for the Black Death. For CCP, you'll be working simply on a reading with some questions. And for my honors and advanced students, you will be working on some primary source documents and answering a few questions on those documents. As always, let me know if you have any questions.